If you're a woman dating specifically for life partnership or marriage, then you already know that you need to put your best interests first in dating and use your time and energy wisely if you're going to meet one of your ones, and take yourself out of the dating scene and into a healthy, loving relationship ASAP. Putting your best interests first, that is, dating in a way that benefits you, includes dating multiple men at the very beginning. But why do you feel so guilty to actually do that? Why does dating multiple men make you feel like you're being dishonest or disloyal? Why do you feel like you emotionally owe the men you're dating so early on in the first few weeks? And there's more. Why do you feel guilty to tell the man you're dating that you're no longer interested? Why do you feel bad to not reply to a nicely worded and thoughtful message on a dating app from a perfect stranger when you're not interested? Plot spoiler. It's not about boundaries. Although you need them, of course, the question I'm asking you is, why do you feel guilty to implement those boundaries in the first place or meet your own emotional needs so early on in the dating process? Why do you feel guilty to do that when you barely even know the man in the first place, right? The answer? You struggle with a sense of misplaced loyalty, and that didn't start in dating. Because if you're watching this playlist thinking, why is it so hard for me to put myself first in dating and relationships without feeling like a bad person? This is the video where you finally understand the deeper reason why. And it's not because you're soft or too sensitive or too passive. You're not bad at dating. You were trained into something that I'm going to call the loyalty complex. And if you identify with having CPTSD or experience feelings of guilt, shame, or low self-worth more often than it seems other people do, if those feelings hold you back in dating, then I really want you to stick around and hear this. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why guilt hits you so fast in early dating, even with men you barely know yet, even when a commitment or exclusive relationship hasn't been discussed. Why you feel responsible for the emotions of the men you date so early on, why you overstabilize relationships and maybe don't challenge the men in early dating too much, and why leaving disappointing, stating your needs, or choosing yourself first feels almost morally dangerous. And none of this started with men. And I'll be sharing 3 real-life stories from some of my clients, with their permission, of course, of what misplaced loyalty can actually look like tangibly in real life, and how for these 3 women, it was actually one of the hidden blocks that was secretly holding her back from attracting and dating men who were actually really and truly compatible for her actual life partner, right? So they were just dating incompatible men because they were blocked by this and they were not consciously aware. So for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to define the loyalty complex as when loyalty to others consistently overrides loyalty to self. It sounds considerate and kind, but in adult relationship, it becomes self-abandonment with good intentions. Okay, so where did this excessive sense of loyalty to even men you barely know come from? Because you didn't choose this pattern, you adapted into it. And a strong sense of loyalty to others is often formed in environments such as childhood environments where stability mattered more than individuality, right? So for example, if you didn't receive a sense of security or emotionally responsive caregiving, you may have learnt to almost be excessively loyal to your parents or your caregivers in order to encourage more secure caregiving from a parent. It can also come from cultural or religious value systems or family structures that emphasize collective identity. For example, family duty and respect for elders, or cultural community, duty and obligation type stuff. Do you know what I mean? If you recognize the words duty and obligation, then you know what I'm talking about. So your nervous system learns from quite a young age, stay connected, stay good, don't rock the boat, love equals responsibility. And you were probably rewarded for being the easy child, being the mature one, for being sacrificing, for being understanding, for being special with your empathy and your understanding of others, not having too many needs. And here's the subtlety in it. Sometimes parents put their needs first, which doesn't necessarily make them wrong or bad. After all, they're only humans too, right? But your child self might have learned, if I don't stay loyal and show loyalty, I could lose connection or security. Your child brain might think, I need to do all of the things to keep my parent in a place where they want to and feel able to and feel like they're at capacity to meet my needs. I need to do all the things my parent wants me to do in order to stay loved. So loyalty becomes survival. And I'm pretty sure every parent has done this from time to time, right? But when parents consistently can't put the child's needs first, for whatever reason, they could have been valid, the child learns, I need to be really easy and not overwhelm this parent, or I need to overperform. And both of those things can end up looking like loyalty, right? And so remember, let's go back to the definition of loyalty complex. When loyalty to others consistently overrides loyalty to self. So in this case, you as a child had a need, but you had to put it second because on some level, you knew that your parent couldn't meet that need for you. I can't stress this enough. You don't need to demonize your parents, okay? This isn't about getting angry with them. It's about looking with more clarity around why putting your needs first in dating feels not just hard, but wrong. It feels wrong. It feels like putting your needs first makes you a bad person. Have you ever felt like that? Have you ever felt guilty? Let me know in the comments. And you might have actually felt guilty even when you know your need is valid, but you still feel guilty. And this is one of those subtle, weird awareness drops I had in my very own dating journey where I realized, whoa, like I was dating in a way where I could not put my future first in dating. Not because I didn't know what to do, and not because I didn't have the logic on what to do, and certainly not because I can't do it, I could do it, but because it actually felt wrong to do it. It felt bad to date multiple men and give them hope and lead them on, especially when one of them was falling really hard for me and telling me that he was really, really liking me, even if it was just the first few weeks, right? And even though I wasn't even sure how I felt about that one man, right? And keeping my options open until I do, which I knew was the most sensible thing to do, but I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it because I felt like I was cheating or doing something wrong. I was scared to hurt someone. I was scared of being cruel to the other person. I wasn't thinking about my own emotions at all. I wasn't thinking about the fact that I felt suffocated or that I felt overwhelmed or that I wasn't sure how sincere he was or how emotionally mature he was, right? Even when no promises had been made, no commitments, right? I was still dating in a way that was putting myself last, right? And a lot of the time, it would be the guy I was dating who would eventually slowly drift away and forget I existed, because guess what? His feelings changed. And he felt good to kind of just drop it and be like, actually, I'm bored of you now. I'm moving on to something else. And I just couldn't seem to put my own best interests first, because when I can see that someone's coming on very strong and it might not necessarily be authentic, not necessarily because he's a bad person, but because men get very caught up in the moment and they don't always take a step back and think, what am I doing? You see, I was actually attracting people who were the opposite. I cared so much about the other person, and they didn't have the emotional bandwidth or the EQ to think at all about how their behavior might accidentally, through no malintention, be misleading me, right? I completely forgot that I existed. And even though I knew that man couldn't return that kindness or that loyalty if the situation was flip reversed, right? I still wasn't able to be selfish, or rather put myself first in dating. Let me know in the comments if you resonate with that. I'm actually super curious because it's a really weird thing to talk about. I haven't really heard anyone talking about why you feel guilty, right? I've only seen videos on you feel guilty, and honestly, like, women are the gatekeepers in dating, right? Have you heard that before? You're the one who actually gets to say yes or no. That's your actual role in the whole process. And that role is super duper stressful if it feels bad to say no in the first place. Not because you don't know how to say no or when to say no or set the boundary, but because it feels bad. Am I making that distinction clear? It feels emotionally bad. And you may even have a strong feeling of guilt to put your best interests first, your own needs above the men you're dating or in a relationship with that. And so that childhood loyalty doesn't just disappear over time. It simply changes target to the adult relationships in your life. And it shows up so strongly in adult dating. So that survival-based loyalty right now moves into, so remember I talked about how it's actually you're trying to get love from your parents, and so you want to do everything right and you want to show up good and you want to make it easy for them. It actually just moves on to the men you date, the men you end up in a relationship with, maybe even with your childhood family, right? Maybe you're still doing that with your childhood family. I only broke this at 38 years old. I only broke this loyalty complex so late on. It breaks my heart to talk about it. This is the one thing I wished I had known sooner, that I was putting everyone's needs above my own, and it was coming from a false sense of loyalty, right? Does it feel like finding a partner for yourself is actually abandoning your parents? I get this with a lot of women from certain cultures where there is obviously a strong family first attitude. I'm from one of those cultures. Maybe also the guilt of doing something that goes against your community identity, right? Dating someone of a different background. I had this with a client. Not to your parents' expectations, maybe even a different religion. He doesn't have the right type of career even, or someone who lives on the other side of the world. That was a huge one for me. I moved across the other side of the world because that's what I really wanted to do. Did I feel guilty about it? Absolutely I did. Did I do it anyway? Yes, because I knew it was the right thing to do. Do you feel guilty to put the need of finding a love that makes you happy? Listen to what I'm saying. Do you feel guilty to find a love that actually makes you happy ahead of the expectations or obligations you feel you owe someone else, whoever that may be? Extrapolate the situation to what feels relevant to you, right? So instead of asking, do I want this? This is the saddest part. Your nervous system, you are wired, will ask, who will this disappoint? And as I mentioned, I'm going to go into 3 real-life coaching case scenarios of this, because it's not always directly with the men. Sometimes it's actually with the setup of dating where this can happen. But basically, because of your loyalty to others before yourself, you might find yourself over-stabilizing relationships so that the relationship lasts or the man you're dating stays, right, above your actual need to be in a relationship where you can have your needs met. And actually, ladies, let's be honest, so in a relationship where you can feel loved, in a relationship where you can feel loved, right? Maybe you're managing your man's feelings, becoming the fixer of all the arguments, shrinking yourself to keep the peace, and you call it love, right? It's just what you're supposed to do in relationships, right? But it's actually relational duty. No wonder you're exhausted and secretly don't even want a relationship. Like, no freaking wonder, right? And the idea of a relationship turns you on and then turns you off again at the very same time. Okay, so let me show you what that actually looks like, and let's introduce our 3 case scenarios who have kindly allowed me to share their story. Of course, all names have been anonymized as always, of how this misplaced sense of loyalty held these amazing ladies, they truly were amazing, just like you, back from finding their desired life partner. Okay, first let's talk about Mira. Mira was this she was gorgeous, right? She was this international businesswoman with an international life, right? But she was based in London because that's where her parents had decided to base themselves in their older age. Her parents encouraged her to actually work with a matchmaker and receive coaching from me at the same time, and constantly asked for progress updates. Super supportive parents, super loving, like really encouraging. But at the same time, there were these subtle messages like, don't move too far away though. Like, we want you to find love, but we're going to feel sad when you're gone. We're going to be all alone. We want you to find love, but we're going to feel sad when you're gone. We're going to be all alone. You know, obviously family is everything, but you've got to do what you've got to do. Like, we also had to leave our parents when we were young, and it's also okay for you to do it, but we're going to feel really sad. They're not doing anything wrong. But she feels guilty. I get emotional talking about this. She feels guilty for even imagining building a life elsewhere. So she stays emotionally stuck, not because she doesn't want love, because loyalty to her parents feels more important than loyalty to herself and the future she desires. Neither Mira or her parents did anything wrong in this situation. I really hope you can see that, right? But these emotional ties are sometimes created from childhood. So it's really strong when it shows up in adulthood with these caregivers again, right? So this doesn't even really have to be verbalized. These kind of dynamics are set up so early in childhood. Children sense a sense of loyalty to be loved even before they can speak. So the adult woman, in this case Mira, feels guilty. I don't want to abandon my parents and leave them all alone. They're really old now, and is completely unable to take any meaningful action in her dating life because she is subconsciously completely paralyzed by the guilt. She's subconsciously blocking herself, right? Her sense of loyalty to her parents keeps her completely single. And so it's so understandable, right, for her to feel that way. But her sense of duty to her parents is so strong that she cannot actually put her best interests first in dating. This is one of the hardest things to break, and it's the hardest thing to coach around because it has to come with a client who sees this dynamic happening. If a client cannot see this dynamic happening, I cannot coach, because it can feel like a threat when someone comes along and says, hey, do you think your parents might be the problem? It feels like a threat, and the coaching connection will be broken so fast. So coaching around this very complicated topic requires a small iota of awareness that this dynamic between very loving parents and children can actually also be the problem. Okay, let's move on to client 2, Samira. So Samira was another client who was being encouraged to basically work with a community matchmaker again. Both these ladies came from a certain background where this was kind of like there was a community matchmaker and there were certain sort of like criteria in terms of like culture and religion that had to be matched. That's why in these two cases, that's the case. It's still applicable to you regardless of your background and culture, okay? But amongst the encouragement from her family, there would also be a mix of like passive aggressive comments. So this scenario is a bit different, right? Such as, oh, I'm really glad he said yes to a second date with you. That's a surprise. Or I know you can sometimes be a lot. Or make sure you behave yourself on the date, right? So she's supported and devalued at the exact same time. She believes her family loves her, and they do in their own slightly imperfect way. But she unconsciously takes on the role of the less desirable one, or the awkward one in the family system, or like the black sheep, right? Her loyalty to the family unit keeps her from questioning whether what her family are saying is really truly correct or their perspective. So her dialogue is, they love me, they don't mean anything by it. And they don't mean anything by it, but she's still taking it into her self-worth because it's negative dialogue, and she's in a situation where she's feeling pressure from her family, but also from herself because she wants to find a relationship, right? And later, her self-esteem is too low to actually show up on a date in a way that actually gets her valued and appreciated by the right men for her. Her situation did work out in the end, thank goodness, right? But I want to show you, like, at worst, she was basically attracting partners who devalue her, and in a similar way, because that's what she's used to. Her nervous system learned love and criticism are basically the same thing, and they're not. So if love and criticism have been packaged up together, then that's something you need to look out for in the dating dynamics and the qualities of the men you're dating, because if you experience that in your childhood, I don't want you experiencing that in adult relationship, because you deserve better, quite frankly. Okay, let's move on to client 3, Emma. Emma was also a very typical situation, but it's showing up in a different way, right? So basically, anytime she met a man she really liked, she would say, I really like him, but I don't know how he will fit in with my families and friends. And the thing about this, right, is she really liked dating men of different cultures, right? But she found herself feeling self-conscious and embarrassed to introduce the men she wanted to date to her family and friends. And it wasn't, and I have to say this carefully, it wasn't her who was feeling like this. She was an international traveler. So she, when you travel, you start to look at different cultures and people of different backgrounds as quite desirable, because you've learnt to develop attraction to them. We tend to develop attraction to things that have been labeled as attractive and been put in front of us. So unless you actually widen the breadth of your life experience, you will tend to have a strict type. She didn't have a strict type because she had this like worldliness and this depth of experience and a curiosity. And all of these qualities are honestly what made her such an amazing person. But she didn't have these values or feelings. But she kind of knew that her family and friends might make fun out of her, be a bit toxic about it, or just like maybe even like not even to that level, but maybe sort of like it's gonna raise an eyebrow, and that made her feel self-conscious. And we all feel like that because we don't want to be abandoned, right? But here's the next bit. Then she felt ashamed of herself about that because she knows that's not her value or belief system. But she knows she's acting on that, the value and the belief system of maybe these family and friends, because that whole raising eyebrow energy makes her feel super scrutinized. And you know, that's kind of part of CPTSD as well. If you grew up feeling super scrutinized, you're going to do everything you can to go against the grain and raise that up again in adult life. Okay. So on a deep level, it wasn't how she felt, but she felt ashamed that she was basically allowing that to filter into her own mindset, right? It was how she believed her family and friends to feel. I don't know if they actually did anything. It's how that she believed them to, they may react, right? So in this case, her sense of loyalty was to their feelings above her own. And the loyalty and fear of abandonment by friends and family leaves her dating for a man her friends and family would like, but that she wouldn't ever really be able to fully choose. So she experiences an emotionally stressful tug of war where she is never really able to put her own desires first in dating. Her loyalty to her identity in her family system, in her friendship group, in her community, let's just use that word, even though it's not strictly applicable here, because of her fear of abandonment, effectively keeps her single. And on the flip side, she can't force herself to choose a man she doesn't even like in the first place, right? So all of these examples, I hope that that's kind of explained these really complicated feelings, and feel free to transfer them. Like, ask yourself, where could this be showing up in my dating world? It doesn't have to be a literal mirror for mirror example. It's a complicated concept to assess, right? But all of these examples show how loyalty is driven by three things. I want you to pay close attention to these: guilt, a sense of duty and obligation, and a fear of abandonment. Okay, but let's bring it back to dating and relationship, because this sense of loyalty and responsibility can also shift to the adult men that you're dating. And it's going to look different because the scenario is different, right? So putting your best interests first in dating can make you feel wrong or guilty for dating multiple men at the same time, because now you're not being loyal. You're not showing that you're a good person, right? You might hurt someone's feelings, especially when one man expresses a lot of interest, but bearing in mind it's very early on and no commitments have actually been made to each other. So that can feel wrong to you. You might agree to or offer exclusivity too early because you don't want to mess the other person around, right? Even though you're not sure about him yet. This loyalty complex comes up in so many ways in dating. And this false sense of being loyal or good can completely end up sabotaging your dating process to get any actual real outcomes for you, okay? And so here's a journaling prompt for you. Where am I more loyal to others when dating or in a new relationship than actually being loyal to myself? Trust me, do that journaling prompt. Don't put pressure on yourself. Just do a freestyle journal and see what comes up for you. And if you feel comfortable, I would be so happy to hear what they are in the comments, because this is one of those super weird topics that I would love to just learn from you guys, how this shows up for you in your dating life and relationship life. Because remember, this entire series is about losing yourself in relationship. And in the first 3 videos, we talked about how that gets set up so early on in dating. Okay. So underneath this loyalty complex are 3 things: guilt, duty, and fear of abandonment, okay? Not an inability to set boundaries. It's conditioning, okay? So you don't struggle with boundaries. You struggle with misplaced loyalty. Your system thinks, if I put myself first, I might lose love. So you put yourself last, and then you call it being a good person. And being a good person just feels so punishing, doesn't it? Like, I really hope that this is landing. There is nothing wrong with you. You learnt this. Your nervous system is protecting attachment the only way it knows how. But here's the question now. If this pattern was learned, how do you actually change it in real life? How do you shift from loyalty to others back to loyalty to self without feeling like you're becoming detached, selfish, or unkind? Click the next video to find out.